Hey folks, here's a ukulele that takes me back. I kept one of these. Look at this lovely, the light in here is not very good, but look at the lovely figure on that. It's got two eyelet knots. It's all rosewood. Anyway, this was, you probably can't see that, but this is a UK boy ukulele, and I literally have had hundreds of these come through. And did quite a lot of videos back when I first started this channel, and this is an example of the pure flux and mutability of the musical instrument trade. These were available to order in bulk, and I ordered loads of them, all different finishes. This is one of my favorites, so I kept just one so that I have a record of it. And this one's sort of a prototype. It has an engraving that wasn't on the originals, on the follow-up models, and it's just a really nice concert ukulele. So I just kept one around, but these were prevalent for a while. I was the main distributor of these ukuleles in the US. When I used to look them up, no one else had them at me, because I was buying them. It was a small production company, and I was buying, I think, the bulk of their runs at the time, so nobody else really had them. I'm sure a few that I've sold might have filtered back through to the used market, although I hardly ever see them, so people are hanging on to them because they were a good deal. But this is an example of how things just disappear in the market. The company that the distributor that I was getting these from, sort of in the raw, because I did a full setup on them and often upgraded parts and put Aquila strings on and things like that, moved on to other brands and different kinds of models that didn't like as well, and these sort of disappeared off the market. I can't find them anymore. And they was my main source of ukulele for a couple of years, I think, and I had loads of them, and it seemed like the supply line was flowing, but then they just sort of ebbed out of existence, and I haven't been able to find out what happened to the company, or if they changed the brand, or they're doing other stuff. And this happens all the time in the musical instrument business, if you're prepared to look at off-brand or lesser brand, or even unbranded instruments, and judge purely by materials and craftsmanship, rather than get all uptight about what's on the headstock. But a lot of these lesser known companies do what we call small run production, or OEM production, where they're making hundreds at a time, not thousands or millions at a time like the big brands do. And they'll speculate in the market. They'll do a run of 100, they'll sell them off, and then they'll do another run of something else. And if they get something that does really well, maybe they'll do a 500 run of something like that. And maybe the materials will dry up, or something else will pop, another instrument, and they'll move to something else. I mean, they don't have the resources of, let's say, an Ibanez or an Alvarez type of company. And if you are someone that looks for this kind of stuff, you have to get used to not just things appearing out of the blue, but disappearing as well. I've had a number of guitar sources that were like this. For a while I was getting the Amari guitars made by Enya, which I did a video on. I was getting these really great solid cedar top guitars stamped by K-Pop, and I've tried 3 or 4 different K-Pop guitars since that were horrible, but they don't, for some reason, they don't do that cedar model anymore, which was really good for the money. All of these things, after a certain amount of time, disappeared off the market. So when I go on eBay now or Amazon now and I see things like Glary, just absolutely all over um, eBay and things, the listings, um, or Johnson or Mitchell or any of these companies selling loads, I always say to myself, I wonder how long they're going to be around. I wonder how long they're going to be available. Because I've seen so many things come and go. For a while I was getting those electric guitars that I did a couple of videos of. The Zebrawood models and the really pretty exotic hardwood electric guitars that were all over eBay for a certain amount of time, and they were really, really poorly set up, but if you got them and did a couple hours work on them, you could turn them into really good instruments. And for some reason the brand went right out of my head, but my main point is it disappeared, it shriveled up. A lot of those things went away, and now some other things have come in to replace them. Sometimes these distributors or manufacturers in China, they'll have 3 or 4 different brands going at the same time, and the brands' names aren't really that meaningful. So you can't really put too much emphasis on any one brand because they're liable to just disappear and something else is going to take its place, or the company will invest itself somewhere else on another line or maybe even another brand. So you kind of have to stay open-minded, in following these trends and picking up these types of instruments, because things don't stick around, things shift and change all the time. And I suppose this is a follow-on to the video I did prior, where I answered the question, where do you get your guitars? What I'm trying to say is that you can't rely on sources sticking around. We're talking about much smaller production companies. We're talking about a whole new way of doing business. It's not like the old model back in the day with Martin and Guild and all those companies. We're talking about brands that don't even make the guitars. They have them made. They get a certain amount made, and then they get rid of them, and then they make decisions on whether to have another run done or to move on to something else. It's a much more short-term gain marketing approach, and you just kind of have to fly with it a bit. So that's why I am always showing you new brands, and sometimes they disappear and we never see them again. It's not always the case. Sometimes they come up with something later on that's also good, which I'm wondering if this particular brand will show back up. But for the most part, you have to move on and find something else. And right now, we've got a lot of good things going. We've got, the whole Harley Benton thing, the whole Rondo thing with Douglas and SX and Agile. And these things look like sticking around a while. The Indio guitars at mono price. The IYV guitars that are selling on Amazon now, seemingly really, really cheap. But who knows? Who knows how long some of these things will stick around? I think Harley Benton are fairly well established, and they just keep bringing out new models. But some of these other brands may disappear very, very quickly. So if it's a good deal, you should grab one, realizing that they may not be around for a very long time. I just thought of the brand that I couldn't think of a few minutes ago. It was the Cozart electric guitars that seem to be disappearing now from eBay after being readily available in the hundreds. And of course there are new brands springing up on there now. I'm just seeing a lot of Grote guitars that seem really cheap. They're only $20 more than the Firefly guitars. I think they're $159 for their Gibson copy. Sundown is another one that I see. For a while, the Bandcamp and the Shengzi guitars were available. Now those seem to have dried up a bit. You know, there's a lot of flux and change and shifting sands in this world, and there are short-term companies that pop up and are competitive, make good stuff, but they may not be around, or they may phase out models relatively quickly, or they may run out of materials. It's not a company that has endless supply of rosewood to make rosewood ukuleles. And of course, the reason why this particular model probably went away is because the sight's banned on this particular hardwood. So yeah, there's a lot to discuss, and the last two videos are for the people that are really nerdy about guitar collecting and may not appeal to the layperson. So I'll get back to doing videos about specific guitars and ukuleles soon. I just felt like sharing a bit of the process, and you are able to do what I do should you want to invest the time, and some of you already do that. I hear from some of you who have your own shops and things. And it's a lot of hard work, isn't it? You really have to invest a lot of time, money, and be able to take risks in this stuff. But if you can do the work, make things play, you either have a lot of guitars that or ukuleles that you can play yourself, or that you can move on and not lose money on. So anyway, there's another waffle job, and I'll see you next time.